Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
When a client initiates a conversation or reacts with interest and curiosity to something we initiate, we are in the qualifying phase. During this time, we move together to discuss value and demonstrate trust in a meaningful conversation between the salesperson and the prospect. If you feel strung along and misled, this one's for you, as Bill and I discuss the sales process, part 2, qualifying, and much more on episode 462 of Winning at Selling podcast.
Well, we have got a big topic here with the book club, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. And that's their chapter 2, which is the qualifying overview, or an overview of the qualifying process. And I think this whole qualifying process in the sales conversation, Scott, is going to be a big part of
definitely
this book.
It is
very important to him. Now, I want our audience to just kind of put things in their mind. When we talk about qualifying, or this qualifying we're going to talk about later in the sales process that we have, that's going to be qualifying whether we want to prospect people or not. So what's our overall view of who our best client is versus the conversation? So we do qualify all along in the sales process, including before we even talk to somebody. So keep that in mind. But they say that as they open up this chapter, qualification is the process of mutual exploration and, we hope, mutual understanding. And we have 3 factors that tend to move together: value, trust, and the flow of meaningful information. And if you're not getting a flow of meaningful information, you're not qualifying properly. So we really need to develop a correlation between the information we receive, is it quality, and the results we achieve. If it's low quality, we're not going to get good results. If they're not telling us the truth, we're not going to get good results. And so that's why that trust is so important, Scott.
Yeah, so true. And when we get into a future topic of trust and rapport, when we get into that step of the sales process, we're going to find how important that is, because like you said earlier, if we're not getting honest answers, it's because we don't have that trust and rapport established with our prospect. And we can't really work with anybody on a solution if we don't have accurate information. And this mutual exploration, and you know, the book talked about this earlier, and like you said earlier, this is an overview of qualifying, and it's going to continue to dig deeper, and we're going to learn more about the questions that we ask when we qualify a prospect to discover, do we move forward or not? Right. And, you know, within the book, it also talks about not a good fit is a great conclusion. I mean, it's not something we want or desire, but it's better if we arrive to that early, and it's a horrible miscalculation if we arrive to it late. And poor qualification results in lost sales and drives up the business development costs. So if we're talking with poor prospects, then we're missing opportunities. It's costing us money because we're not talking to the right person.
Well, I love the example they gave of the company that answered 46 unsolicited RFPs. They had no contact at the prospect company. It cost them approximately $80,000 per RFP. That's $3,680,000, and they won 0 of them. An unsolicited RFP, your chances of achieving that are fairly low, and I think this example shows it. And they made a new rule. You cannot respond. We are not going to respond to an RFP unless we get to talk to at least one person at the prospect company.
Yeah.
Wow, we're really going out on a limb here. Now, talk about salespeople that didn't even bother to make a phone call over and say, "Can I?"
Oh, terrible. I mean, I would want to know, why did you call us? Why did you call us now? Why are you doing this project now? Why don't
they
you
may
wait?
not have even called them. They may have put it in a newspaper.
But I mean, how important is that? I mean, another thing that this chapter talks about is guessing. You know, it went through all kinds of topics that consultants guess at. And the previous chapter, we talked about, you know, the guessing and the mutual mystification that we go through when we're talking with prospects. And,
well, we get this anxiousness, and I've felt it too when I've been in an appointment, that I want to move this on and get to a proposal stage of some kind. Mm-hmm. And, clients are more than happy to let you write up a proposal. Doesn't cost them nothing.
Oh, great.
costs
Right.
you costs you hours of work, even if you're using boilerplate and putting it together. But you're guessing.
Right. Right. The longer the proposal, the more guessing. I think that was
That
in the
was the
previous
point.
chapter. Yeah. And it
Now
seems to
pump
be
this
more
up
true.
to an A plus.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
big one. It's a big proposal, and so it includes lots of charts and graphs. And so, yeah, there's no guessing. And he started to get into his first three steps of order.
Mm-hmm.
Opportunity. You need to know, what is the opportunity? What's going on here? What are the resources that are going to be put into play, and how is the decision going to be made? The ORD, opportunity, resources, and decision. If you don't know those things, you're guessing.
Yeah. And one thing, and he uses the word consultants, meaning salespeople, I think.
Right.
And says many consultants felt deals were qualified based on their own opinions rather than what their client had actually said. And another thing he added is that if we don't ask them how they would measure success, what had stopped them from fixing the problem before, then we're really guessing at the solution and what the proper remedy is to what they're wanting to achieve or what they want to avoid. And I,
Yeah.
I love the list of the no guessing, Bill, if you want to go through
Go
that.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So no guessing on what problem the client is trying to solve. Do we
Or if
really
they
have
even
a
have a
clear
problem.
what is it really defined? Because if we don't have a real comprehensive understanding about what the problem is, any solution is going to create a bigger problem. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Period. It will magnify things. No guessing on defining the problem. So again, really getting into the details and every attribute related to the problem, recognizing the results. So we don't guess on the results. So what would be a good solution? What is the result that we want to accomplish? The financial and intangible impact of the
I'm going to
problem.
go back. I
Yeah.
just thought of something on this,
Yeah.
recognizing the results. One of the things I teach when I talk about questioning is what we call the magic wand question. And I always get pushback on this from my audience. And the magic wand question is Scott, if you could wave a magic wand over this problem,
Mm-hmm.
what would you want to see the end result be? And that really takes them into the future. And salespeople are afraid of that. They're afraid of looking at what the results need to be because they're not sure they can really achieve them. And so we'd rather make the sale and hope it goes well.
Right, right. And we're worried about, us salespeople are worried about being disqualifying if they produce a solution that we can't deliver.
That's
We're
right. Yeah,
out.
that's right. Yeah.
So we don't ask.
It took so long to get into this appointment. I'm not sure I
Yeah.
want to leave it. So let's make sure that no matter how ugly the solution is, it's going to solve it for you.
Yeah. I really hope that they like me, and I hope that they really like my solution, because I'm not going to say anything that's going to get in the way of either one of them, whether it's the right answer or not.
All right, go through the rest of it. I interrupted you though, but
no guessing on who is affected by the problem. So important.
yeah.
I think they talked a little bit in the chapter about the user and the decision maker. And, we also get into the ratifier, the person who writes the check. So we've got more people that are involved in how a problem is affected by different people.
And those are the people that the people doing the RFPs that were unsolicited should have been talking to.
Exactly.
Oh, and by the way, purchasing will get in your way.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
You don't need to talk to anybody.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. They want to have their fingerprints on the deal.
That's right.
And then lastly, no guessing on how to stop the organization, or no guessing on how the problem has stopped the organization. What's prevented the organization from getting the outcome and the goals that they wanted. And those all carry a tremendous amount of influence in a prospect moving forward in the decision. If we don't know what those are, we're guessing.
That's right. And for those of you who've been with us for a long time, if you're not seeing the challenger sale in this, challenging questions that you've got to drive for answers for, and if you're not getting them, you're not going to get a multi-million-dollar deal. You're not going to get the $800,000 deal because you're not getting to the core of the problem.
You might get the deal, but the chances of really pulling it off and getting it fulfilled and implemented, et cetera, is a long shot. Yeah. And if it does happen, you might have $1 million headache too at the end.
I do a lot of work with software companies, and it's the implementation that drives people crazy. And that's because they didn't know exactly what the problem was. And they get into implementation and they just can't do the work.
Yeah. Lastly, they talked about yellow lights and green lights. You remember
I,
that
want,
part of the
I don't
book?
want to go that. I want to go do something before that.
Okay. All right.
And this was the confusion, and I've dealt with this again with software companies, and they talked a lot about words meaning different things to different people and companies. We use terminology a lot in our organization, and when we use a term, it paints a picture in someone's head. So when I was working with a software company, we used the term thin client, and people would just throw that off. Oh, we help you develop a thin client. And the interesting thing was our competitors used the same term and it meant a different thing.
Hmm.
And so if they had talked to our competitors first, we'd throw out this term thin client and they would get a different picture painted in their head than what we were really doing. And so don't use terminology unless you've defined well what that term means. So you might say something, when I say to you thin client, Larry, what does that mean to you? What picture does that evoke for you? If we don't do that, we can't even use the terminology that we think is communicating something to those people. So as we're having these conversations, and if we're throwing out all kinds of terms, we don't know what those terms mean.
Right, right. I want to talk about buzzwords on a future episode when we're doing trust and rapport. So look for that when we talk about buzzwords.
Excellent.
And the impact of buzzwords.
So you want to talk about yellow lights, and that was kind of how he closed out the chapter.
Yeah, yellow lights, and he said that a yellow light never turns green. I'm thinking about that. You're so right. A yellow light
it doesn't turn green on its own. Right?
No, but I've never seen a yellow light turn green. Period. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, I get this now.
So their natural conclusion is to go to red. So if you hit the yellow light, you need to do something about it rather than hope it goes away.
Yeah. And a yellow light is just a feeling or an inclination that something doesn't seem right here. They're contradicting themselves. They're withholding information. Mm-hmm. They're sharing stuff with you that's not really relevant at the time. And maybe they're wanting it to get it off their chest for one reason or another. And so
he gave a great example of his own experience where instead of slowing down at the yellow light and dealing with it, he sped up. And he said, that's what a lot of salespeople do. Yellow light, ignore it, go away. Yellow light, stop it. The CEO's not here. You're going to talk to the wrong person. And he just plowed on through this conversation, and it was just a disaster. And that's what we do if we hope that these go away, if we hope that these indications that things aren't going well, that it's not a good fit, that it's that we missed something, we didn't ask a right question, our assumptions are wrong. If we hit those yellow lights and we just try to blow on through them, we're going to have an accident.
Right. So if you feel it, you see it, you hear it, find a way out to tactfully address it in a way where it can be more defined and clear as to what their understanding is. Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about it. I mean, we just tend to ignore it, right? And because it's uncomfortable,
right?
And like we said, people just want to be comfortable.
We want to create a meaningful conversation and a meaningful understanding, a meaningful exploration. Right. So if there's any confusion at all, it's only going to get worse. We're building a foundation from this point forward in the sales process or how we're working with prospects and clients. So we need to address it.
Yeah, we have to have some courage in our conversation in order to move things forward in a trustful way. And if we feel like they're lying to us, as you said, we have to find a way to say, you know what, when in this conversation, I'm getting the feeling that I'm not getting all the information that I need here. It seems like there's some holes in the research that don't always make good connections. What can you tell me about that? And when people are challenged, quite often they will then give you the truthful information. It takes a couple tries.
It does.
So don't avoid those yellow lights. And then he finished off with being attentive listener. Make sure that you're trying to understand in your listening, not just respond. And we've seen that quite often in sales conversations. We only listen so that we can say something ourselves rather than really taking. And that's one of the advice I give to people. Take written notes in your meeting. Don't just be looking at them and nodding and thinking about what you want to say next. Take written notes so that you know what you did in the meeting, because you will forget. This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by the hosts of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Every professional athlete has a coach, someone to assist and advise. Tiger Woods had 4 swing coaches so that he could stay at the top of his game. What would you like to improve or overcome in the next year? Perhaps as a salesperson, you want to be more productive with your prospecting, overcoming objections, or delivering more effective presentations. As a sales manager, you want to create a spark within your sales team with a new message, a refreshed approach to starting new conversations with prospects, or you are looking for market-ready strategies to increase revenue and shorten the sales cycle with your existing team. Or as a business leader, you want to transform the sales culture and your value proposition for the new marketplace. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why your hosts of Winning at Selling podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Now you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. Go to winningatselling.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself, your people, and your customers, and invest in your future. So our topic today is also on qualifying. And Bill, we should probably add some context as to the difference between how the book is used in qualifying and how we are using qualifying in the sales process. And you're probably a little bit more eloquent in describing it than I am.
Well, at least qualifying at this step in the sales process. So our first step was strategy. The second step is looking at qualifying. And we may have talked about this a little bit in the strategy session, but that is qualifying to see who we're going to prospect. Who are our best customers? Who are our best opportunities? We're going to qualify later, like they talk about in the book, and all through the process. But in this step, we're trying to determine what's our best opportunity as we move forward to do prospecting, which is the next step.
So is it really safe to say that this is probably the step that maybe has the most influence with marketing, where we're working with marketing? Because if we're targeting a specific group or qualifying a perfect prospect, we're working with marketing to be able to build some brand, name awareness, some familiarity, so that when we're calling, prospects know who we are. Is that a safe assumption?
Depends on where you are in the leadership in your organization. If you're a director of sales, or hopefully a director of sales and marketing, you can influence what that marketing looks like. If you're a salesperson in the trenches, chances are you're not going to have a lot of influence, and you're going to have to take the lead of whatever marketing and sales leadership decided who are we going to be talking to. But one of the challenges I've seen is someone will call in as a lead from what's happening in marketing and say they need a certain thing or have a certain level of interest. And if we don't understand what they've been marketed, then we don't know how to start the conversation out properly.
Right. Well, we don't know what they know about us.
That's right.
So some of the information that they may know about us is inaccurate. And this causes a lot of objections, misconceptions, skepticism, that if we don't address it, we only build on the confusion.
Yep. But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, I think, in how can we as a salesperson or as a sales manager, how can we qualify and determine who that best, most likely customer is?
And I think better to define most likely would be the ones that have the shortest sales cycle, the highest closing ratio, the greatest profit, gross, adjusted margin with our sales. Those are going to be the folks that we want to go after. Those are the best fits. And those end up causing us to have more wins than long sales cycles and low closing ratios do.
Right. Yeah, I think the frustration of prospecting, which is our next step, is if I think everybody is an equally likely customer, then I can get very frustrated when I start to make those phone calls or solicit however I'm going to solicit, because I'm not getting an equal level of opportunity. And so the more no's I get, the more frustrated I get in sales. So I was at a wedding this weekend talking to a young lady at my table who she works as helping people decide whether they want to go into a graduate program at one of our local universities. And we were talking about what is her likely customer, and she really had not been given any training or thought into who are the best people that might be wanting to go into this graduate program. And she's talking to undergraduates, people who've graduated from the university with an undergraduate degree, and she's just talking to everybody equally. And I said, well, why don't you examine who's taking the graduate program now and has taken it maybe for the last 3 or 4 years, find out why they took it, and then look at their history, and maybe that history in the university, what classes they took, what they were interested in, what they wanted to do. Maybe that will give you an indicator of who the most likely people that you should call first.
What are some of the things that you think companies should take into effect when it comes to qualifying? And I'm thinking about like geographic territories, company sizes, maybe revenue.
Yeah, I think those are some of the big things. I think a lot of it are heart things too, though. One of the things I say is that I look for companies who believe that their people are important to their growth versus their systems. I talk to a company early in the conversation, I'll talk about their people and how important their people are to their growth. And if I get a feeling that they think that their systems are help them grow and it doesn't matter who they put in there, then that may not be a good likely client for me. So you're right, size can be very important. Now, size is important to me because I want companies that are big enough that are ready to grow, but small enough that they don't have a super robust training program or training organization already, who then becomes a barrier to using outside resources. So that's what I would look for. I would look for an organization that doesn't have a huge training group because they think they're going to do everything on their own. So think about the company and what their needs are so that you can then fill whatever needs you fill, they're more likely to want them.
Some of other things to keep into consideration is urban versus rural. Sometimes there's a difference between companies that are in metropolitan statistical areas, so they're concentrated in urban areas, or they might be in rural areas. Maybe how long a business has been around. I think sometimes companies that have survived for 2.5, I've heard even 5 years, if they've survived that 5-year mark, then they got a greater chance that they're going to continue to grow. They're going to be successful, and they're going to pay you when they send you a PO.
Yeah. Do they pay? Do they have a good reputation in the marketplace? Who are they currently using to fulfill the need that you're looking to fulfill?
Yeah, and I think you said it earlier, so really look back at your genealogy and look at who is a perfect customer. Who would you just like to take times 10 and have 10 deals like the one that you did with that company? What are the attributes of that company? And then go into, any database or, different factors that you can search on prospect lists and enter in those key elements. Get at least 3, and then start with the primary 3 and then think about the secondary 3.
And we can't forget referrals. If there's some opportunity where I have some kind of a referral base or where I have some relationship, so using LinkedIn more effectively, that says these people know who I am, they'll be more likely to take my call and at least start a conversation that's not just, we already have that, no thanks, hang up. So having those warm, qualified leads might be more effective because they know who you are and they know the work that you do.
Yeah, I think a lot of prospects are looking on the internet these days and they're visiting company web pages, and company web pages that have a survey or a form that they ask a prospect to fill out. That also helps on the qualifying, and whether, there's somebody you call first thing in the morning, or maybe you call in the afternoon. Maybe they're not as good a fit as you'd originally like, but it'll also tell you, the chances of them becoming profitable for you just based on how they fill out the form. And keep in mind that prospects that want information will take the time to fill out the form. People who are not interested and committed to making a decision or buying from you are going to be frustrated with filling out the form. So you always think, well, I don't want to ask too many questions because you're going to get frustrated with me. No, if they find value in the conversation and they find value in the solution that you offer based on their own perception of the value and based on a clear, accurate representation of the brand and the reputation that the company has, they'll fill out the form. They will, because they want the information.
Right. Yeah. Every little barrier that we put up that they jump over shows or indicates that they have a higher level of interest. So that form can be a small barrier that we want them to jump over in order to show that they're truly interested. But I think when we're qualifying, we're quite often talking about outbound. And so what Scott and I are saying is, don't just take and play everybody equally. think through who that best customer is, make some decisions on finding people that are similar, finding organizations that are similar to those best customers with those traits. And then not only will you have a better conversation, but because they're similar to companies that you're already working with, you have stories to tell about how you help this other company who is similar to them overcome the challenges. And that makes you appear to be more of an expert and not just someone who's out prospecting raw. That conversation that says, Jerry, I don't know if we can help you, but we were able to help XYZ company and they have similar issues. That's a strong statement to be able to say rather than, well, let's sit down and talk and maybe we can fumble around till we find something.
Right. And not even know what the outcome is of the meeting or the next step. So that's, and we have to be able to know what our goal is when we're talking to somebody and qualifying them. What do we really want to accomplish?
Right. And so now we're starting to meddle in our own next step, which is prospecting. So I don't think we want to go too far into that, because that'll take us from qualifying who's the best client to now what do we say to them when we get them on the phone. And that's our next step in the sales process.
Yeah. This segment of the Winning at Selling podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door, by Steve Kloida.
Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer. And the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com. All right, as we wrap up today, I have a quote. It's not Plato or Socrates. It's just a good writer that I really like, Robert Schuller. And he said, better to do something imperfectly than to do nothing perfectly. And I think that's absolutely true when we talk about qualifying. And as we're going to talk about prospecting next week, go out and stir the pot, make some things happen. Better to take a few no's with the opportunity to get a yes than to do nothing at all and get everyone to tell you to no.
Great. Yeah, very well said. So everything we talked about today is at the website winningatselling.com. You can get the show notes. You can listen to past episodes. You can look at some of the guests that we've had on the show. And we welcome your feedback. We welcome your comments. We welcome the topics that you would like Bill and I to cover. If you like a book, let us know what it is. It's sales, strategy, implementation, and sales enablement, whatever that is. Let us know. We always love to know what our listeners are reading.
And then next week, chapter 3 of Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. It is a long chapter. I think it's about 40 pages. So we're going to cut it up into a couple of sections. So this is called Qualifying Opportunities. And next week, we're going to work on pages 46 through 62. There weren't real great headers to break it up by a segment. So we'll just go by pages 46 to 62. And our main topic is continuing our 10-part series on the sales process. Part 3, prospecting. Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.